I'm Raleigh, North Carolina divorce attorney Jonathan Breeden. In this video, I'm going to answer 5 questions that I commonly get as it relates to property rights when you're going through a divorce. One of the first questions that I'm often asked is, what property will I get to keep once the divorce is over? You will get to keep a fair share of the marital property, also known as community property in some states. Marital property is property that you and your spouse accumulated during your marriage. It may include your home, vehicles, investments, personal property, and retirement accounts. Marital property is usually divided equally between the spouses. An unequal distribution is sometimes appropriate to avoid alimony or to provide for a spouse with special needs. You will also get to keep all of your separate property, provided that it has not been so mixed with marital property that it cannot be identified as your separate property. Separate property is property that you acquired before your marriage or property you received during the marriage, such as a gift or your inheritance. Earnings from separate property that accumulate during the marriage, as long as the property is clearly separate, will remain your separate property and will be not divided as marital property in North Carolina. A second question that I'm often asked about dividing property in a divorce is, what happens to the family home in a divorce? If one spouse wants the home and can afford it, the equity in the home is credited to that person's share of the marital property. The spouse taking the home must provide the other spouse with equivalent assets or cash in compensation for his or her share of the equity in the marital home. The equity can be determined by having the home appraised and then deducting any outstanding mortgages. If you or your spouse cannot agree on who keeps the home, or neither of you can afford it or even want it, the usual alternative is to sell the home and split the proceeds. If you think you want to keep the family home, ask yourself these questions. Can you afford to buy out your spouse's interest? Can you afford to pay the mortgage, taxes, and upkeep on your post-divorce budget? Is suitable alternative housing available for a more affordable price? Often neither party can afford the home, and the only realistic solution is to sell it. A third question that I'm often asked is, am I entitled to a share of my spouse's retirement account if we divorce? All property accumulated during the marriage, including your spouse's retirement plan, is subject to division. You will be entitled to a fair share, usually half, of the amount accrued in your spouse's retirement account from the time you married until you divorce. Your spouse could buy out your share of the plan by giving you other marital assets or separate assets. Otherwise, the plan benefits are divided. A court order, known as a qualified domestic relations order or a quadro, may need to be sent to the plan administrator to complete the division. Retaining an interest in your spouse's retirement plan may be important if you are unlikely to secure sufficient retirement benefits otherwise. A fourth question that I am often asked is, what can I do to prevent my spouse from taking our possessions and draining our accounts before I file for divorce or equitable distribution of property? You'll want to document what you own so that your spouse does not take or destroy property. You will have to have proof that the property existed. Take photos like your iPhone or video phone and just go through the house and inventory everything in the house. Make copies of titles and financial documents that you have so that you'll know what there was and where to go looking if stuff were to go missing. The court could award you a greater share of the marital property to compensate you for missing assets. When you file for equitable distribution in North Carolina, which is where you ask the court to equitably divide the marital assets, you can ask the court for orders prohibiting the behavior that would lead to the destruction of marital property during the litigation of the case. A spouse who violates these orders can be punished. A fifth question I'm often asked is, what if my spouse wasted a lot of our assets during our marriage? Sometimes one spouse spends marital assets excessively for selfish reasons. Examples include spending substantial sums on extramarital affairs or spending lavishly on drugs, alcohol, partying, or gambling. If you did not condone or benefit from the excessive spending, the court may award you more of the remaining marital property to you to make up for the wasted funds. Please give us a call if you live in Johnston, Harnett, or Wake counties in North Carolina and would like to schedule a consultation to discuss a divorce or other family law matters.